They mocked her Earth armor, until the instructor realized it was from the war that shook the galaxy. Cadets from dozens of species filed out in groups, their armor shining under the white lights. Energy shields flickered softly around sleek suits, and advanced weapons were locked neatly at their sides. This place was meant to show power, progress, and unity. Near the end of the line, a single human woman stepped onto the platform alone. Her armor stood out immediately. It was thick, dull gray and marked with scratches, dents, and dark scorch lines. There were no glowing panels, no floating holograms, no smooth curves. The plates were heavy and layered, connected by visible joints and reinforced seams. A faded Earth emblem sat on her chest, chipped at the edges, its colors worn by time. The nearby cadets noticed at once. "What is that?" a tall reptilian cadet whispered, his frilled neck lifting in amusement. "Is that metal?" Another laughed. "No shield nodes, no adaptive surface." A group of insectoid trainees clicked softly, scanning her with their compound eyes. Their expressions shifted to open confusion. The human woman did not react. She adjusted the strap of her equipment pack and walked forward with steady steps, as if the weight on her shoulders was nothing new. Instructor Kael'thrin stood at the center of the platform, his towering frame casting a long shadow. He was a veteran of 3 campaigns, his own armor decorated with bright insignia and honor marks. His gaze swept over the arriving cadets, assessing them instantly. When his eyes fell on the human, his brow ridge lowered slightly. That armor was wrong. He had seen human equipment before. Modern Earth designs were lighter, faster, and full of smart systems. What this woman wore looked ancient, crude, like something pulled from a museum display. She reached the registration terminal and placed her hand on the scanner. The system hesitated for half a second longer than normal before confirming her identity. Name: Mara Ellison. Her helmet remained under her arm, revealing a calm face and focused eyes. She looked neither nervous nor proud, just present. Kael'thrin cleared his throat and the platform fell silent. "Welcome to the Galactic Defense Academy," he announced. "You are the best your worlds could offer. Here, rank means nothing, armor means nothing, only performance matters." His gaze briefly returned to the human. "Today, we begin with baseline evaluation." The group moved into the assessment hall, a massive chamber filled with training lanes, holographic obstacles, and sensor arrays. Cadets were assigned stations one by one. Mara was placed in lane 7. As she stepped onto the marked floor, the system scanned her armor again. Warning symbols flashed briefly on the control panel, then vanished. "Unregistered materials detected," the system announced in a neutral tone. "Non-standard kinetic dispersion." Kael'thrin frowned. "Proceed," he ordered. The first test was endurance. Controlled impacts struck the cadets from multiple directions, measuring balance, reaction, and armor response. When Mara's turn began, a low-energy pulse slammed into her left side. She shifted her stance slightly. The force traveled across her armor in a ripple and disappeared. Her boots scraped the floor but did not slide. A second impact followed, stronger this time, then a third. The sensors blinked again. "Force absorbed above expected tolerance." Murmurs spread through the observation area. "She should be down by now," someone said. Mara remained still, breathing slow, eyes forward. Kael'thrin leaned closer to the display. The readings made no sense. The armor had no visible field emitters, yet the force distribution was almost perfect. The next test involved movement through a hazard course. Gravity shifted, the floor tilted, obstacles rose without warning. Many cadets relied on automated adjustments. Their suits corrected posture, boosted speed, compensated for mistakes. Mara did none of that. She moved deliberately, placing each step with care. Her armor creaked softly, joints flexing, plates overlapping as designed. She ducked under a swinging barrier, rolled once across the floor, and rose smoothly without wasted motion. It was not flashy. It was efficient. A feline cadet watching nearby narrowed her eyes. "That's not academy training," she murmured. "That's battlefield movement." The final portion of the baseline involved controlled combat contact. Padded drones fired low-level energy bolts at random intervals. Mara took several hits directly to the chest and shoulders. Her armor darkened briefly where the energy struck, then returned to normal. No alarms, no damage warnings. The drones recalibrated and increased output automatically. Still, she stood. Kael'thrin raised a clawed hand. "End test." The hall buzzed with quiet conversation as cadets compared results. Many glanced toward Lane 7. Mara stepped off the platform and removed her helmet fully, resting it against her hip. A thin line ran across its surface, a repair seam sealed long ago. A tall avian cadet approached her, feathers puffed in poorly hidden curiosity. "Human," he said, not unkindly. "Is that armor ceremonial?" She met his gaze calmly. "No. Then why use something so old?" Mara considered the question. "Because it works." He laughed softly, assuming she was joking, and walked away. Caelthrin did not laugh. He pulled up the detailed scan logs on his wrist display. The material composition listed metals and composites that had not been in common use for generations. Some entries were partially redacted, locked behind old conflict clearance codes. One marking caught his attention. A faded serial line etched near the collar plate. He zoomed in, his breath slowing. He had seen that format before, long ago. In archived combat footage the Alliance preferred to forget. The instructor looked back at the human woman who now stood quietly at the edge of the hall, alone but unbothered. Other cadets kept their distance, unsure whether to mock or avoid her. Caelthrin straightened. Perhaps this academy had not received a relic. Perhaps it had received a reminder, and reminders, he knew, were often more dangerous than weapons. The next cycle began with tension hanging thick in the air. Word had already spread through the academy that the human in old Earth armor had produced strange results during baseline evaluation. Some cadets laughed it off, saying the sensors were outdated or miscalibrated. Others watched Mara Ellison with open curiosity. A few, especially those from proud warrior cultures, felt something closer to irritation. Instructor Caelthrin stood before the assembled class in the tactical arena. The wide space was ringed by shielded walls and observation decks, built to withstand serious combat training. Floating drones waited near the ceiling, their lenses focused and ready. "Today," Caelthrin announced, "we move into controlled engagement exercises. You will test teamwork, discipline, and restraint." His eyes passed briefly over Mara, then moved on. "Force output will be limited. However, injuries are possible if protocols are ignored." That warning drew smiles from several cadets. They lived for challenge. Squads were assigned quickly. Mara was placed into Squad Delta with 3 other cadets. A broad-shouldered Varkesh male with stone-like skin, a lean insectoid tactician named Cyril, and a young aquatic species cadet whose suit kept her body hydrated. None of them spoke to Mara as they moved into their staging zone. The exercise was simple on the surface. Squads would advance through a simulated urban battlefield, secure objectives, and repel opposing teams controlled by the arena system. As the scenario activated, buildings rose from the floor in precise patterns. Smoke drifted through the artificial streets, the lighting dimmed to mimic a damaged city under siege. "Move," the Varkesh rumbled, taking the lead. "Human, stay behind, don't slow us." Mara nodded once and fell into position without argument. The first contact came quickly. Energy fire erupted from behind a collapsed structure. Cyril shouted warnings, marking targets on the squad's shared display. The Varkesh charged forward, relying on his natural armor and personal shield. The aquatic cadet provided suppressing fire, while Cyril coordinated movement. Mara advanced last, watching angles, noting patterns. A blast struck the Varkesh's shield hard. It flickered, then stabilized. "Shield at 60%, he growled. "Push!" Another blast came, stronger. The shield failed with a sharp crackle, and the Varkesh stumbled. Before anyone could react, Mara stepped forward. She moved without hesitation, placing herself between the incoming fire and her squadmate. Energy bolts slammed into her chest and shoulders. The impact was heavy. The sound echoed through the street. She did not fall. The armor absorbed the force, plates shifting subtly as if alive. Heat marks spread, then faded. The squad froze. "What are you doing?" Cyril snapped. "Cover," Mara replied simply. She advanced 3 more steps, raising her weapon and firing controlled shots. Her aim was precise, disabling the automated enemies one by one. The pressure eased. The Varkesh stared at her back, his stone-like face unreadable. "You should not be able to do that." Mara did not answer. She stepped aside once the threat was gone, allowing him to retake the lead. As they moved deeper into the simulation, the pattern repeated. Whenever danger spiked, Mara positioned herself where the risk was highest. She did not seek attention or command. She simply acted. By the time Squad Delta secured their first objective, the others had stopped ignoring her. The next phase escalated unexpectedly. The arena system introduced hostile drones using unfamiliar tactics. Their energy output increased beyond the standard training limit. Cyril clicked sharply. "This is not normal." Instructor Caelthrin noticed at the same time. His console flashed warnings. "System," he ordered, "explain deviation." "No error detected," the arena responded. "Adaptive challenge engaged." Caelthrin's jaw tightened. Adaptive challenges were meant for advanced classes, not mixed-species beginners. Before he could override the setting, alarms sounded. A blast hit the aquatic cadet's side, sending her into a wall. Her suit flashed red. "She's injured," Cyril shouted. The Varkesh turned, but another wave of drones descended, cutting off their path. Mara moved instantly. She lifted the aquatic cadet with practiced ease, her armor supporting the extra weight. She placed the injured cadet behind a reinforced barrier, positioning her own body to block the open angle. Energy fire poured in. Mara felt the impacts travel through her armor, spreading the force across her frame. The memories stirred unbidden, different streets, real smoke, real screams. She pushed them aside. "Stay down," she said calmly. The Varkesh roared and charged again, fueled now by anger and something close to respect. Together, they pushed back the drones. Above, Caelthrin stared at the live feed. The readings on Mara's armor were beyond impossible. Heat levels that should have caused catastrophic failure barely registered. He pulled up her equipment file again, bypassing newer filters, diving into archived databases. A warning appeared. Accessing restricted historical conflict data. He ignored it. The serial format confirmed his fear. The armor was from the late stages of the Human Defense War, the conflict that had halted a full-scale galactic advance through sheer human refusal to collapse. The war that had forced the Alliance to rethink what victory meant. Caelthrin remembered the reports. Human soldiers holding positions long after shields failed. Armor designed not to be perfect, but to be repaired under fire, worn until the user could no longer stand. He looked back at the feed. Mara was still standing. The exercise finally ended under emergency shutdown. Medical teams rushed in to assist the injured aquatic cadet who would recover. The squads gathered in silence. No one laughed now. Several cadets stared openly at Mara's armor, at the scars and marks that were no longer amusing but unsettling. The Varkesh stepped toward her. His voice was low or careful. "You fought like this before," he said. "Not training, not games." Mara met his gaze. "Yes." "Where?" She paused, on Earth and off it. Before he could ask more, Instructor Caelthrin approached. "Cadet Ellison," he said, his tone formal but tight. "You will report to my office after debrief." "Yes, Instructor." As she turned away, Caelthrin watched the way the light caught the worn edges of her armor. The class had learned something important that day. Some wars did not end when treaties were signed. Some soldiers simply kept carrying them forward, piece by piece, in steel that refused to fail. Instructor Caelthrin's office was quiet, built from dark alloy and reinforced glass that looked out over the academy's inner training fields. Trophies and campaign markers lined the walls, each one a reminder of battles fought and survived. Myra stood near the center of the room, her helmet resting under her arm, her posture relaxed but respectful. Caelthrin studied her for a long moment before speaking. "That armor," he said slowly, "is not listed in any modern Earth registry." Mara nodded. "It wouldn't be, because it was decommissioned centuries ago," he continued. "Along with most records of the war it came from." She did not correct him. Caelthrin turned his display toward her. An old image filled the screen, grainy, dark, filled with smoke and fire. Human soldiers moved through ruined structures, their armor heavy and scarred, their movements steady even as explosions tore the ground apart. "That war," Caelthrin said quietly, "nearly shattered the early alliance, not because humans were stronger, but because they would not stop." Mara's eyes flicked briefly to the image, then away. "You were there," he said. "Yes. In what capacity?" "Infantry." Caelthrin let out a slow breath. "That would make you older than your file suggests." She met his gaze evenly. "Medical stasis, long deployments, Earth used what it had." Silence stretched between them. "You should not be here," Caelthrin finally said. "Not as a cadet." Mara considered that. "I'm here to learn how the galaxy fights now, and to teach if needed." Before Caelthrin could respond, alarms sounded across the academy. Red lights flashed. "Attention," the system announced. "Containment breach in Training Sector 9. Live targets detected. Caelthrin's blood ran cold. Sector 9 was not meant for active use. What targets? He demanded. Unidentified autonomous warforms, origin unknown. The lights dimmed further. Emergency barriers began to slide into place. Caelthrin looked at Mara. This is not a drill. I know, she replied. They moved quickly into the corridor. Cadets were being evacuated from nearby sectors, instructors shouting orders. The air vibrated with distant impacts. A group of trainees stumbled past them, fear clear on their faces. Drones went berserk, one shouted. They're not responding to shutdown codes. Caelthrin swore under his breath. Old war machines, he muttered. Leftover salvage reactivated by accident. Mara stopped walking. Those aren't accidents, she said. He turned to her sharply. You recognize them? I recognize the pattern, she replied. They're testing defenses, probing response times. As if on cue, the wall ahead exploded inward. Smoke and debris filled the corridor as a heavy combat drone pushed through, its frame angular and brutal, weapons already charging. Cadets scattered. Caelthrin raised his weapon, but the drone fired first. The blast slammed him into the wall, his shield flaring wildly. Mara moved. She stepped in front of him, taking the next shot squarely to her chest. The impact echoed like thunder. Her armor glowed briefly, then stabilized. She advanced without pause. Her weapon barked in controlled bursts, striking joints, sensors, power nodes. The drone staggered, then collapsed in a shower of sparks. Caelthrin stared. That was Alliance-grade armor-piercing fire, he said. You absorbed it. Mara looked down at the scorched plates. This armor was built for worse. More impacts sounded deeper in the sector. Caelthrin activated his communicator. All available instructors converge on Sector 9. This is a live engagement. Negative, came the response. Internal routes blocked, cadets trapped in the central arena. Mara turned toward the direction of the noise. That arena has civilians. Trainees, Caelthrin corrected. Doesn't matter, she said. They ran. The central arena was chaos. Several drones hovered above the floor, firing at anything that moved. Cadets huddled behind overturned training barriers, shields flickering and failing. One drone turned as Mara entered, targeting her immediately. She did not slow. Blast after blast struck her armor, each one absorbed, redirected, dispersed. She crossed the open floor under fire, something no one else dared to do. The cadets watched in stunned silence. She reached the nearest drone and slammed her armored fist into its core. Metal folded. Systems died. Another drone descended, firing at point-blank range. Mara braced, taking the hits, then ripped a damaged panel from the first drone and hurled it like a blade. It sliced through the second drone's weapon array, disabling it. Caelthrin joined the fight, rallying instructors and cadets as confidence returned. Follow her lead, he shouted. Focus fire on weak points. The battle turned. One by one, the drones fell. When the last one crashed to the floor, the arena fell silent except for heavy breathing and the crackle of dying machinery. Mara stood at the center of it all, armor blackened, stance steady. A young cadet approached her, trembling. You didn't run. Mara looked at them gently. Running wasn't an option. Medical teams rushed in. Damage crews followed. Caelthrin walked toward Mara slowly. I understand now, he said. That armor wasn't meant to look strong. No, she agreed. It was meant to keep someone standing. The cadets gathered around them, no longer mocking, no longer whispering. They looked at her with something new in their eyes, respect and fear. Caelthrin straightened. The Academy owes you an explanation and perhaps an apology. Mara shook her head. Just teach them what matters, he nodded. That night the Academy archives were quietly unlocked. Old records resurfaced. Human combat doctrine was added back into the curriculum, and among the cadets, one truth spread quickly and without exaggeration. The galaxy had forgotten the war that shook it, but one human had not. The Academy did not sleep that night. Lights burned across the training fields as damaged teams worked to repair the scars left by the rogue war machines. Instructors moved with urgency, issuing reports, checking rosters, confirming that no cadet was missing. The air still carried the faint smell of scorched metal. Mara Ellison sat alone on a bench near the edge of the central arena. Her armor lay open at the seams, while maintenance drones worked carefully over it. Sparks flickered as damaged plates were realigned and sealed. The armor looked worse than before, darker, more scarred, but still whole. Instructor Caelthrin approached quietly. You should be in medical, he said. Mara shook her head. The armor took most of it. That doesn't mean you did, She gave a small smile. It usually does. Caelthrin watched the drones work. Up close he could see the countless repair marks, each one different, each one clearly done by hand under pressure. "This armor has been rebuilt many times," he said. "Yes," Mara replied. "It was never meant to be replaced, only fixed." Caelthrin folded his arms behind his back. "The Council has already sent inquiries. They want to know how pre-Alliance war machines ended up in our training sector." "They won't like the answer," Mara said. "No," he agreed, "but they will listen now." Across the arena, cadets stood in small groups, speaking in low voices. Many of them glanced toward Mara, then quickly looked away, unsure how to approach her. One finally did. The Varkesh cadet stepped forward, his massive frame moving more carefully than usual. "Human," he said, then paused. "Mara," she looked up. "We mocked your armor," he continued. "We judged without knowing. That was wrong." Several others gathered behind him, different species, different worlds, all carrying the same uneasy expression. Mara stood, closing the last latch on her armor as the drones powered down. "Everyone judges," she said calmly. "It's normal." "But you did not judge us," the Varkesh replied. "Even when we were afraid." Mara considered that. Fear doesn't make someone weak. What they do with it matters. The Varkesh bowed his head slightly, a rare gesture of respect among his kind, then stepped back. The next cycle began with a full assembly in the main hall. The damage had been cleared, but the mood was different. The laughter and careless confidence were gone, replaced by attention and quiet expectation. Instructor Caelthrin stood at the center, flanked by senior staff. "Recent events have exposed a failure," he began. "Not of equipment, not of courage, but of memory." He gestured and the hall's displays activated. Images of the old human defense war appeared, cities under siege, human soldiers standing shoulder to shoulder with battered armor, refusing to retreat. "For generations," Caelthrin continued, "the galaxy chose to forget this war. It was uncomfortable. It challenged our assumptions." His gaze moved to Mara. "But forgetting does not erase truth." Murmurs rippled through the hall. "Effective immediately," he said. "Earth's late-war combat doctrine will be included in core training. Not as history, but as study." Some cadets straightened at that. Others looked unsettled. Mara stood quietly at the side, not seeking attention. After the assembly, Caelthrin approached her again. "The Council has offered you a position," he said. "Advisor, Instructor. You would not have to pretend to be a cadet anymore." Mara was silent for a long moment. "I didn't come here to be honored," she said. "I came because the galaxy is changing again." Caelthrin nodded. "And you believe another war is coming?" "Yes. What kind?" Mara looked out across the training fields where young soldiers from a dozen worlds practiced together. "One where technology will fail," she said, "where systems will break, where plans will collapse. And then," he asked, "then only discipline and people will matter." Caelthrin inclined his head. "That is a lesson worth teaching." Mara accepted the position on one condition. She would keep her armor, not as a symbol, not as a warning, but as a reminder. Weeks passed. Training changed. Cadets learned how to move without assistance, how to repair equipment under pressure, how to stand when retreat seemed logical. They learned patience, endurance, responsibility for the one beside them. Mara trained with them, not above them. She never spoke of her battles unless asked, and even then she kept it simple. "Hold the line. Protect the weak point. Don't waste strength." The mocking never returned. Instead, when Mara walked through the halls, cadets straightened unconsciously, not out of fear, but out of respect. One evening, as the sun set beyond the academy domes, Caelthrin stood beside Mara on a balcony overlooking the stars. "The galaxy once believed humans were reckless," he said, "too stubborn, too emotional." Mara watched the stars in silence. "And then," he continued, "it learned you were something else." She turned to him. "We learned it about ourselves first." A message arrived on Caelthrin's display. Long-range sensors had detected unknown fleet movements beyond Alliance space. He showed it to her. Mara studied the data, then closed her helmet and sealed her armor with practiced ease. "Looks like the galaxy remembered us," she said quietly. Caelthrin watched her, the worn Earth armor catching the fading light. For the first time in many years, he felt something close to relief, because when the next war came, the galaxy would not face it alone. It would face it with a human who had already survived the one that shook everything.